the tagline for our new service, our new series, not service, new series, Messy, is loving others isn't easy. I'm surprised I didn't get an amen on that one. But it's hard for us to love on other people sometimes. But I just want, loving others isn't easy, but it is possible. So I think that's the most important part that we need to know. And I'm really excited about this series because it allows us to focus on the things that are most important. And that's important to Jesus, and what's important to him should be important to ourselves. So for me, I've been preaching for about 12 years now, a little more than 12 years, coming up, I guess 12 and a half years. And I've yet to meet someone who I thought had a perfectly clean, sanitized life. Everything went perfectly to plan. And if you're that person, I'm going to guess you're probably young maybe, and you haven't had to experience much yet, but if you are, I'll pray for you, because it will come. So things happen though. Life has a way of being messy, and that's why this series is called Messy, because when we go through life, it's not always going to be, sunshine and rainbows and unicorns and fluffy clouds and all those things. But there are real struggles in life. If you've ever had to deal with losing a loved one, that is one of the hardest things you can go through in life. When you have to go through things like that, or if you've ever lost, been held at gunpoint, if you've ever had a house, that burned down because of fire, if you've lost property, had a car stolen, and sometimes it's just getting in a really bad car accident, it could be getting hurt at work, it could be all of these things, right? They complicate life. And honestly, that's part of life too, right? That's the normal part of life that we see. It's the normal part of life that we experience. But we always get this feeling that we shouldn't tell people about our struggle. We shouldn't tell people about our mess. I made this mess, I gotta clean it up, right? I think, who's ever told themselves that? I've made this mess, I've gotta clean it up. And now I'm not talking, teens, about the mess you make in your rooms. I mean messes that you make in life where we're like, okay, I've made a mess with this, I need to fix it. And this may come to men more, but men naturally have that I'm going to fix everything syndrome. Your wife tells you a problem, your answer is, well, this is what you should do. And wives, I can bet you most of the time that's not what you want your husband to tell you. You're not like, I wasn't coming to you to tell me how to fix it, I just needed you to listen. I've been told that. And I've been told that not just from my wife, but from, I have 2 older sisters, mom, grandmas, aunts, other friends, women in life. You get told that a lot, right? I wasn't trying to get you to fix it, I just need you to listen. If they want your advice, they'll usually ask for it. Again, that may be a guy thing, we kind of give that advice freely and get ourselves in trouble. But loving others isn't easy, but it is possible. So I want us to remember that as we go through this series, as we go through today's focus, but that's our series focus. Loving others isn't easy, but it's possible. It's easy to love the people who are like us. It's easy to love the people that we like. It's easy to love the people that have stuff we want. Because you're like, well, if they got it, I want to see how they got it so I can get it too. It's easy to love those people, but what about the people that we need to love that can bring us no gain at all? That can bring us nothing. They're not the people that can give you $100. They're not the people that are going to give you a job. They're not the people that are going to give you a promotion. They're not going to help you or benefit you at all. Can you still love those people? Those are the people that we need to talk about. It's not the ones who can bring influence and affluence to your life, but the ones who have no benefit at all. When I was a kid, I was probably 4, 5, 6, somewhere in there. I don't really remember my exact age, and I don't even remember what we were doing. But I remember this. I was with my dad. We were driving home. And I really want to say we were at like a monster truck rally or something. That's what I think, but I don't remember. And it seemed really late at night. It was dark, and we're going down 60 highway to, or like just outside of Springfield, where you go across James River and you go up the big hill there. And we're right there, and there's a lady walking on the side of the road, walking up the hill. And this is, the early 90s, so it's a while ago. And I remember my dad looking over at me and saying, should we see if she needs a ride? And it's like, well, yeah, probably. Like, I don't know, I'm 4 or 5 at the time. I'm like, why is she not in a car? Like, why is this lady walking down the side of the highway? So my dad turns around and we pick her up, and she rides with us about 20, 25 miles and to about as far as we were going. And we let her out a little ways back, and she walked, and we kept going down the road. I don't remember what she looks like. I don't remember her name. I don't remember where she was going. I don't remember any of that. I just remember my dad stopping on the side of the road to help a complete stranger. If you watch much TV, Hollywood would tell you that this is a very, very bad idea. This is how you get kidnapped and robbed and killed and all these bad things. That's how a normal horror movie starts, with a car broken down on the side of the road, and or vice versa. If someone's broken down, they need a ride, and it's some crazy guy that picks them up, or it's a crazy person on the side of the road trying to get somebody. But that is not the case in real life most of the time. I'm not saying it never happens, but I'm saying the majority of the time that's not it. But what stood out to me was my dad was willing to stop and help a stranger who could bring him nothing. He wasn't like, hey, can you spot me $20 for the gas since I gave you a ride? It wasn't anything. It was just, I'll help you because you need help and you're another human being. And that's where I think we fail a lot of times. We allow the focus of Hollywood to come into our lives more than what we know to be true, what we know to be right. The things that, I don't want to stop because what if they have a gun, or there's a commercial, where the guy's standing on the side of the road with an axe, then there's a guy with a chainsaw, and it's that's the concept, right? It's all these people are dangerous. But I've stopped on the side of the road to help people. I've done those things, and I've yet to have those things happen. It doesn't mean it won't. It very well could, and that could make my life a little messier, but it'll be okay. But that brings us to today's focus, and that is that we need to love the people around you however you can. However you can. It doesn't mean that we need to spend and buy extravagant gifts. We need to be able to give people thousands of dollars. We need to do anything crazy. But just love the people around us however we can. For instance, I am not going to do a construction project at somebody's house. That would be a very, very bad idea. Because it'd be sure, I think you kind of put a nail here maybe and a nail here, and it wouldn't go well. But I might be able to help somebody with their car. I might be able to help somebody with their yard. I might be able to help somebody with their lawnmower, whatever those things. I might be able to help in those areas. But I'm not going to do a construction project. So helping someone however I can is not building something for them. Right? You can ask Kristen, I don't even hang the pictures in the house. She can use the hammer, she can use the nails. It's better for both of us that way. If it's I can use a screw gun. I'm okay with drills and stuff, but my dad said that, growing up, the only way you work on a Chevy is you don't need a few tools. You need a hammer, and you need a screwdriver, and some gasoline. And that's usually about it. But in all reality, I never used a hammer when I was working on a car. So that's not my forte. So I let her hang the pictures even. So I'm not going to do that. But what is it that you're good at? Maybe you are good at construction. Maybe you can help there. Maybe you're good in these areas of life that people don't expect you to be able to help in. We all have different gifts, we have different abilities, so part of loving people however we can is working in our own strengths. If there's a group of guys and they're going to do a building project, or a group of ladies doing a building project, whatever, if I have people there to supervise me and tell me exactly what to do, I can help. But outside of that, I'm not your guy. So just know that if you're ever doing it. But I can help you move. I can carry heavy things. It's a really great task and ability I have. We joked around about that just earlier today. I can carry heavy things. I carry this thing in by myself in the mornings half the time. I'm okay with that. But we have to find our ways to help. So today, our key scripture will be from Luke 10, verses 25 through 37. I think if we look through this, we can see that Jesus is giving an example of loving others and those that are around us however we can. The scripture will be on the screen with us if you don't have your Bible, or if it takes you a minute to find it. I know e-Bibles, I talk about them a lot. YouVersion is your best friend, because all you got to do is click Luke 10, 25, and you're there. They're very nice, but it will be up here as well for us. So with this, when we see here, we can see kind of a setup coming. If you read before it, the Pharisees and Sadducees, they're the religious rulers of Jesus' time. They're coming up to Jesus and they're asking questions, more or less trying to trick him. They're trying to trick him into saying something that can say, aha, you're wrong, or you're this, or you're that, because Jesus was taking the masses and they were following him instead of following them. But Jesus did things that were a little unorthodox to them at that time. So they didn't like that. They didn't like anyone that would push the envelope or change things. They didn't want any of that. They wanted to stay their status quo with their power, with them in charge. And that's when they send in a lawyer. And we all know that no good story starts with a lawyer. No offense if you're a lawyer or if you have friends who are lawyers. It's a nice little joke there. But when we start with a lawyer, we know that a lawyer is one thing. They are an expert in everything legal, basically. They are an expert in the law. If you had a friend who's a lawyer and you needed help in a way, you're probably going to be like, hey, I don't understand this. Right now it's tax season, so if you have a friend who's an accountant, you're calling like, hey, what can I put in this box? Or what's supposed to go here? Like, how can I get some more money back? Like, can I use this as a tax write-off? Or can I not? Like, we're going to go to a lawyer for legal advice, but you're not going to go to him for a lot of others. One thing to know about the biblical time period that they're in, since they're Jews, he's a lawyer, he's an expert in the Levitical law. That's the law from the Old Testament in Leviticus. So that is where his expertise is. He's not a lawyer in Roman law. He probably wants nothing to do with Roman law. So it's specifically about the law of God. So that's what's interesting about the way this goes. And we'll go ahead and start in verse 25. And verse 25 says, And a lawyer stood up and put him to the test, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit life? And Jesus responds. It's funny. You see him actually respond to the lawyer with, well, what's the law say? Because Jesus says, and he said to him, what is written in the law? How does it read to you? Well, you're a lawyer. What's the law say? You know how to inherit life. Because like I said, they are purposely trying to incriminate him. They're trying to discredit him among his peers and his followers. So in verse 27, the lawyer, and he answered, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. This little last part, and your neighbor as yourself, that means he's been listening to Jesus. Because just coming up to this, Jesus said this, you need to love your neighbor as yourself. So he's like, yes. He's been listening, he's been studying, he's coming prepared. And as he goes on in verse 28, and he said to him, You have answered correctly. That's Jesus told him. You've answered correctly. Do this, and you will live. You will have eternal life. In verse 29, but wishing to justify himself, he said to Jesus, And who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? He wants to know, who's my neighbor? Because the Levitical law is only for Jews. It's only for those that were under Israel. That is not how you treat foreigners. That's not how you treat people from other countries. That was only how they treated each other. If you notice, if you've ever read through any of that, I know that is the hardest part of the Bible to read. It's the hardest part of the Bible for me to read. And when you read through some of that, it'd be like reading the Constitution. It doesn't read real well for us, I don't think. But there's actually an entire section for how you treat foreigners, how you treat people that are born somewhere else, people that are not Jews. So, who is my neighbor? Because the Jewish law, talking about your neighbor, that's talking about other Jews. That's the people from where you are from that talk like you talk, look like you look like, and are your really distant cousins of some sort. This is hundreds of years later, but they're still very distant cousins. They're really one gigantic family. And this is where the story of the Good Samaritan comes. Jesus replied and said, A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among robbers. And they stripped him and beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. And by chance a priest was going down on that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise, a Levite also, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. One interesting thing here, when you look at this whole set, is that when he was going down the road from Jerusalem to Jericho, the Pharisee, the priest, and the Levite, it says that they both came up on him and then passed by on the other side. That indicates that they were actually going in the same direction as the man that was attacked. They were going from Jerusalem to Jericho. Because I've always heard this story taught, that what they were doing, the why they went to the other side, was that they were actually trying to participate and practice in ceremonial cleanliness. But they're leaving. If he's catching it, he's going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. He's leaving. They're coming up on him on the same side. And then they're like, no, we're going to go over here because we don't want to be anywhere near him. It's actually, the story's not representing people trying to be clean, because the cleanliness was only to go into the temple. It was only to be before God. If they've left, the ceremonial cleanliness is not the priority. What Jesus was actually pointing out was a lack of compassion. It was, I'm not going to get messy. I'm not going to get dirty. I'm going to go to the other side like I didn't even see him. That's what the story is actually, when you go through and actually read and digest what's actually being said, that is what it points to. Just one interesting thing here with it is the road from Jerusalem to Jericho actually drops 3,500 feet in elevation, if I can talk, over 10 miles. So, I mean, you're literally going down the road. Because if you've ever been anywhere that's that high up, and 10 miles isn't a very far distance to drop that many feet. So it is a downhill road, basically, for them as they go. And then as we continue in verse 33, but a Samaritan who was on a journey came upon him, and when he saw him, he felt compassion. And that's the pointer. They didn't feel compassion. This man, the Samaritan, felt compassion and came to him and bandaged up his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. That seems odd to us today. That was actually sanitary. That was kind of disinfected, try to clean him the best that they could. That was what they would have used. And he put him on his own beast or donkey or whatever, and brought him to an inn and took care of him. On the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper and said, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I return, I will repay you. 2 denarii is actually enough for about 2 months' stay there. The reason that's important is that they're pointing out this man would have been beaten so badly that he wasn't expecting him like, oh, he'll be out in a few days. This wasn't like he scraped his knee. He was very badly beaten, and it's going to take him a while to heal before he can travel. So he's expecting 2 months, and then he says, and whatever more you spend, not if you spend more, not if more happens or more comes, but whatever more you spend, I'll come back and repay you. So he's expecting it to maybe be even longer than 2 months. And then Jesus asked the lawyer, which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell into the robber's hands? And the lawyer said, the one who showed mercy toward him. Then Jesus said to him, go and do the same. I think when we look at this, and in the very beginning, the lawyer is quick to point out the law and the preaching and the speaking that Jesus has done. And you could even say it was Jesus' covenant. It was his law, it was his promise. And his law was pretty simple. It was very simple in word, I should say. Because his law was love God with everything, basically, all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and then love your neighbor as yourself. That's a really easy law to keep, especially when you're used to keeping 600, 700 laws and trying to remember them. I have a hard time remembering like 10, 20, so 600, 700, I'm out. I don't know. And you got to think the way that we read it, and we're standing there, we're thinking, who has ever read the Constitution? Let's ask that. Anyone read the Constitution? I've read it. How much of it do you remember? Right? So they're reading their laws, which is what we see in Leviticus, is really they're governing for their country, their laws. And Jesus says all those laws they're fine, but this is the law. These are the laws that are the most important. Love God, love everyone else. Now, and most of us have heard this, and it's an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, right? That's the Old Testament law. And I promise you, that is an easier law to keep than loving your neighbor as yourself. Because someone cuts you off in traffic, you want to cut them back off, right? If someone aggravates you, you're going to aggravate them. Someone, jabs you at work, you'll jab them back. And it goes back and forth, right? I'll get even, right? And revenge is something best served cold. Like, I'm going to sit on it, I'm going to stew on it, I'm going to get back. That's how we feel most of the time. That's what we want to do, right? That is my natural instinct. Like I said, if someone, you're trying to merge in traffic. I was in Kansas City Monday, And they can at least drive pretty decent up there because they're used to having like 5, 6 lanes of traffic. In Springfield, it would be a nightmare, even with a third of the traffic. And all this people they're merging, and there's always like those few cars, like we know they need to merge, but the lane actually goes like another quarter mile, so they're going to drive all the way to the end of it and then get over. What's your immediate reaction? I ain't letting them in, right? Anyone else say that? Is it just me? I'm the only one that thinks it, right? And maybe you're the person that drives all the way to the end of it because you're like, I ain't waiting with all these people. I'll get someone else to let me in up here. We're usually falling on one side or the other, but it's like, I'm not letting them, but if we're that person going through, because maybe we're in a hurry, maybe there's an emergency or whatever, we're like, oh, I hope someone lets me in. Like, I hope someone lets me in, but that's not our natural response to that. And that's when you squeeze into traffic, you know, that person, like, that space wasn't for you. You ever said that when you're driving? I do. Kristen's laughing because she knows I do. But that's the law that's easier to keep. It's easier to say an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. I'll get my own revenge. But Jesus said, there's 2 laws that matter. And that's love God, love your neighbor. Neighbor cuts you off in traffic, let it go. And honestly, if most of us thought it was our neighbor driving next to us, you probably wouldn't cut them off, right? You'd be like, maybe, oh, hey neighbor, or, you know, oh, that's my pastor, or whatever, you know, like, and see, yeah, it's, oh, that's my boss I just cut off driving, like, that wasn't a good idea. He's going to be like, how come you're running late today? You were behind me, though. I saw you. Yeah, that makes it worse. So that's our natural response, though. We'll get even. We'll get ours. If we looked and we drove and we acted like every person we interacted with was our neighbor, it was our co-worker, it was our fellow parishioner, our fellow person at church, we would probably treat them differently, right? You ever have those bad days and you're at the store and you're just really short with somebody? You're like, I'm just here to get this and get out. Like, how are you? Fine. I have to be really careful of it on both sides. One, I have a car that people can easily recognize, so I can't really get away with much, and they're not like, oh, that car looks familiar. You know, it's not hard to spot. But then I am somewhat of a public figure to an extent, so you don't want to have a bad interaction with somebody at a restaurant or whatever, like, oh, they give terrible service, I am not tipping them, and then that person comes into the church the next day. I mean, how big do you think I would feel, right? I'd feel about this big. So if we treated everyone as our neighbor, we'd act different. Our natural tendencies would probably be a little more relaxed. we might take longer to do things. One thing that I know when Kristen has traveled, when I've traveled, when we're in other countries, they actually put a lot less importance on time than we do. When we were in Kenya, they started church like 15, 20 minutes late because there were some people that were on their way, but they weren't there yet. So they're like, well, wait, it's not a big deal. If we did that here, people would be like, we got to wait 10 minutes for so-and-so. Like, it's time, right? And I'm just as bad because I am very intentional. Me and Darren have talked about this like a year ago now, probably. We want to start on time, right? I mean, in the Nazarene church, it's kind of a joke. You know, you got Nazarene time. We got 10, 15 minutes still. We can start at 11:15. It's not a big deal. You know, in Nicaragua, it's the same way. Time is not as important as people. So if we took an extra minute, an extra few minutes, and we spent time with people, we helped people, we maybe had a slightly more meaningful conversation. You know, we were at least just polite, right? Just polite. If you're late, you're late. Now, don't go to work tomorrow and tell your boss that I said, well, if my pastor said if I'm late, I'm late. It's no big deal. But, you know, maybe got to plan a little better. Maybe you'll leave a little sooner and have a little more time for those. That's what I have to try to do. But these challenge me. When I think of other people as my neighbor, it challenges me to how would I treat my neighbor? Right? This is the person that I pull in my driveway and I see in their driveway. Oh, hey, neighbor. I'm standing on my back deck and I can see in their backyard from there. You know, hey, you know, you're not going to be that. You're usually not going to be a jerk to them. Or, I don't know, maybe you got some bad neighbors. Maybe you need to think of a better neighbor. Think of your favorite neighbor, and that's the person we're talking about. Love everyone like that person. Or if you're like, you know, Ron out there with all the land you guys have, if you actually live there on that property, maybe it's the neighbor that's a little bit closer to you when you might see. Growing up in the country, I had an aunt, uncle as a neighbor, So, love everyone as your neighbor. It's like, man, I'm at their house all the time. I don't think my other neighbors want to see me that much. They don't want to see me all the time. So with Jesus' law, it's love God, love everyone. It's not just love some people, love the ones you like, love the ones you don't like, love everyone. It's very simple to remember, hard to put in practice. And that's how come it's today's focus. It's love people however we can. However we can. If it's, like I said, taking an extra moment, if it's having a nicer conversation, it's helping them however we can, that's what we do. And today, the next thing that we have to know is we need to be able to get messy. Some people, when we talked about this, cleanliness is important. Clean freaks, OCD, they have these negative connotations, but I really love it because things are always in order. Things are usually easy to find. Things are presentable because they're clean. If it's up to me, it would be none of those. That's not my natural tendency. But my natural tendency isn't to get messy for other people, it's to get messy for myself. Well, I was doing something and I just didn't feel like putting it up. Or I'll put it up when I'm done. My wife doesn't want guitar cases laying around the living room floor all the time. That's not something she wants. You don't want cables and all that stuff just laying around the floor. So you kind of learn to put those up. But the messy I'm talking about is the messy like what the Good Samaritan saw. He saw someone in need. He saw someone hurting, someone beaten. And he took them, put them, for us today, we'd be putting them in our own car in the passenger seat. It didn't say he put a towel down and put a blanket down and I got to make sure that this is fine and it doesn't stain my seats. Make sure he doesn't stain my clothing or my blanket or anything. He didn't say any of that. It just says he took him, picked him up, put it on his animal, his beast, his donkey, and took him to the inn. His concern wasn't on staying clean, on staying upright or cleanliness or any of those things. His focus was on simply, there's another person and they're hurting. His decision came from one place. It wasn't here. It wasn't a mental thing probably. Because our minds, we can talk ourselves out of helping people, right? There's someone walking down the side of the road and it's raining. You're kind of like, I got some stuff in the seat. Or whatever. Yeah. Only people walking in the rain to steal your killer. Who's going to do that? We have those thoughts, right? And those aren't the right thoughts. See someone walking, you give them a ride. If, someone broke down the side of the road, you can see their car steaming and stuff like that. Well, I'm running late. Or if I stop, I don't have time. I don't have time. But getting messy is the decision not that comes from here, but it comes from here. It comes from your heart. Compassion can only come from one place normally. For me, and for most people, compassion is not our normal feeling. It's not our normal brain set, our mindset that we're going to do. But what Jesus was saying with the story of the Samaritan that he gave is, don't be afraid to get down the nitty-gritty, roll up your sleeves, and help somebody. Because the Samaritans and the Jews, they're pretty much mortal enemies. They believe that they worship from different places. They believe they have distant relatives and all of that. So it's kind of like a very bad relationship. This is basically saying that guy that you can't stand at all, yeah, he's the one that helped this guy. But these people, the priests and the Levite, that's who they'd expect to be the savior, right? That's who they expect to be the person that comes in and he'll scoop it up and save the guy. But it's that guy you really don't like. If you're a Chiefs fan, it's that Raiders fan that helped him. As a Chiefs fan, it's kind of a tough pill to swallow. It's like, you don't make that guy the hero, right? That's kind of an anti-hero. That's the person that you don't want to be the one saving. But the priests and the Levites were more concerned with crossing T's and dotting I's. It was about looking this way, performing this way, being clean, his schedule, his time, and what he was doing. It wasn't the concern of people. So for us, we have to be willing to know that what God required is for us to get messy sometimes, to help people and help be people in people's lives. If you're always afraid to get messy, you'll probably also never see a lot of change in other people around you. Because, I don't know about you, but especially before I was saved and knew Jesus, I wasn't a very clean life person. There's a lot of complications. The day before I actually went the first time to the Nazarene church, or the week before, I went on Wednesday night. Saturday night / Sunday morning, I was sitting in the front seat of a cop car that day. It was 2, 3 in the morning, and calling my dad at 3 in the morning. If any of you have ever wanted to call your parent at 3 in the morning when you're 16, 17 years old, sounds fun, right? Luckily, they didn't answer. And I'm like, that's the last thing I want to do is drive home and my dad sitting at the table waiting for me. But it wasn't that I was doing anything crazy or anything too bad, but it was kind of like a check myself of who I'm hanging out with and what we were doing. It snowed a little bit. And as 16-year-olds would do, there was a school parking lot that had snow on it. So we're over there doing donuts and stupid stuff like that. And a couple kids were on four-wheelers. Well, they took off when the cop came, and I'm in a car, so it's like, well, I guess I'm going to sit here. And so for me, it was a kind of a wake-up call, I guess literally. But, I remember I didn't sleep. Because I don't know how your relationship with your dad, but I've always loved my dad. I've always respected my dad. I always joke around, and I mean it seriously too. I'm afraid of no man but my dad. He's about the only one that I would not want to mess with. He works for a chemical company. I remember 55-gallon drums completely full. Him just pulling them up, tilting them, swinging them about 20 feet, completely full, rolling them. When I was 18, I was helping him unload a truck. He rolled him off back of a truck on a tire, bounced off. Okay, so I'm like, yeah, I can do this. How'd you do yours? This isn't coming. It's like he kind of rolled like this, like it's moving a couple inches. He's like, no, it's just like this, and just grabs it and just rolls. And I'm like, well, dang. So don't mess with that. That was something I've always believed and known. So I didn't sleep. I was the favorite kid. I know I've told you guys that a lot, and you could ask my sisters, they tell you the same. But I put the cop's card in front of where my dad sits. Right? I'm like, he's sitting here. So I go up to my room. You know how much I slept? None. Maybe half an hour. Got up and walked downstairs, and my dad's there, and he's like, where'd this come from? We have that in the story. So for me, I was messy. If it weren't for my friends, a lot of you guys have met Jonathan, it was him and his dad and his family that invited me to church over and over and over and over, and I finally went. And here I am now. The last thing that we have to see is what Jesus told the lawyer at the very end. Go and do the same. That's what our command should be for us. It should be simply go, show mercy, show love. Care for someone else that has no benefit to you. Care for the person that isn't like you, the person that doesn't look like you, act like you, think like you, work like you. Go and do the same. Feel free to get messy. Feel free to get in the dirt and the grime and just walk through life with them. I think this is really the classic version of treat others how you want to be treated, right? No one wants to be treated like dirt. No one wants to be treated like they're second-class citizen. No one wants to be treated like their opinion or their life or anything matters less than someone else's just because they think, walk, work, talk differently than someone else. But we have the ability to go and do the same. We can make a difference day in and day out with just our small actions. They say that oftentimes research shows that just simply smiling and saying hi can make someone's day better. I don't know about you, but I can do that. I may not be able to go out and give people thousands of dollars and buy new cars and houses and do these huge things. But if you notice, Jesus didn't give the example of a rich man giving his possessions to somebody. It wasn't doing everything. It wasn't giving up everything. It was a man, a regular Samaritan man, someone from Samaria, gave up some of his time and gave up a little bit of his money to help somebody. That's it. Because I think often for us, we think to help somebody, we have to do these huge actions. We have to be able to pull together thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. And, well, if I was a millionaire, I could help people. If I had this, or if I had a bigger house, I could do this. If I had this, I could do this. But that wasn't the example we were shown. We were shown a very simple man going, helping someone in a very simple way. something that we could all do. It doesn't take a big action. And I think that's what we have to know. And something that we see in John, before Jesus ascended, and this goes right along with Jesus, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. Here's a simple way to say that. Jesus told us to love everybody else the way that he loved us. Jesus sacrificed his life, gave up his life for us. He gave up his kingdom to come down here for 30 plus years for us. He came down and he sacrificed everything he had, bore our sin, bore our punishment, all on a cross for us. That's the way we're supposed to love other people. A sacrificial love. One that is able to move, and one that is able to change, and one that is able to do different things, because that is living a messy life. Because loving others isn't easy. It's not going to be easy. It's not however you want to do things. Loving others isn't easy, but it is possible. It's something that we can take strides in and make steps in every single day. And that's why today's focus is just loving people however we can. It's one step at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time. Because your small actions, like I said, just smiling and saying hi, or maybe holding a door for somebody, just those small things even can make an impact. But what else can we do? Can we help the people that you know need help? One of our people's not here today, and he's not here because he's having truck issues. And I told him, I said, well, let me know what you need. You know, Kristen's dad owns an auto parts store. Let me know what you need. Like, we can get something. It's, you know, what he told me that he needed, it's not that hard to get, so I'm going to try to get it for him. Small actions. It's going to cost me next to nothing to do it. A little bit of time, a little bit of money, but I can do it. What can you do? What can you do that might mean getting a little messy, might getting a little dirty, might be making a little bit of a difference? I ask if you guys will stand with us. And I ask that everyone would close their eyes and no one looking around. And this is a tough message because loving ourselves is usually a little bit easier. Loving people we like is easy. But love the people